In suburban Connecticut, a 62-year-old widow was about to discover that family loyalty could be weaponized against her. What began as offering temporary help to desperate relatives spiraled into an unthinkable demand. They wanted her to pay them rent for living in her own home. Jenny Andrew wasn't prepared for the betrayal that would unfold in her four-bedroom colonial, but she was about to prove that underestimating a grieving widow was the biggest mistake her family could make. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The phone shattered the silence of Jenny Andrews' Tuesday evening at exactly 9:23 p.m. She had been sitting in her home office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork from Robert's estate, trying to make sense of insurance claims and legal documents that seemed to multiply every day. 3 months of widowhood had taught her that grief came in waves, but the administrative aftermath felt like drowning in an endless ocean of bureaucracy. Jenny, the voice on the other end, was familiar but strained. "It's Lisa. I'm sorry to call so late, but I didn't know who else to turn to." Lisa Martinez had been Robert's younger sister, though she'd kept the family name after her divorce 5 years earlier. Their relationship had always been cordial but distant. Holiday gatherings, occasional birthday cards, the kind of connection maintained more by habit than genuine closeness. Robert had been the bridge between them, always ensuring his sister felt included in family celebrations, despite her tendency toward drama and financial instability. Jenny set down her reading glasses and leaned back in Robert's leather chair, the one she hadn't been able to bring herself to move from his desk. "What's wrong, Lisa?" The sob that came through the phone line was raw and desperate. "We lost the apartment, Jenny. The landlord evicted us yesterday. Marcus and I have been staying in my car with the kids, but it's getting cold and the shelters are full. I know this is a lot to ask, but Robert always said you had that big house." Jenny's heart clenched as she looked around the colonial home she and Robert had purchased 15 years ago. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a finished basement, and more space than one person could ever need. Since Robert's sudden heart attack, the house felt cavernous, filled with echoes and memories instead of laughter and conversation. "Oh, Lisa, of course you can stay here," Jenny heard herself saying. "How many of you are there?" "Just me, Marcus, and the twins. Emma and Ethan are 12 now, and they're good kids, I promise. Marcus has been looking for work, but you know how it is with the economy. Construction jobs are scarce, and his back injury from last year makes it hard for him to do heavy lifting." Jenny nodded, though Lisa couldn't see her. She remembered Marcus Coleman, a quiet man in his late 30s who'd been dating Lisa for about 2 years. He seemed decent enough, though Jenny had always sensed an underlying tension in him, a barely contained frustration with his circumstances. The twins, Emma and Ethan, were bright children who reminded Jenny painfully of Robert at that age. Curious, energetic, and full of potential. "When do you need to come over?" Jenny asked. "Would tonight be too soon? I know it's late, but we're in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, and the manager keeps coming out to check on us. The kids have school tomorrow, and they need a place to shower and get some real sleep." Jenny looked at the clock, 9:30 p.m. She thought about the guest rooms upstairs, unused since Robert's funeral, and the way silence had become her constant companion. Having people in the house again, voices and footsteps and life, suddenly seemed like exactly what she needed. "Come over now," she said. "I'll get the rooms ready." After hanging up, Jenny spent the next hour preparing for her unexpected guests. She opened the 2 guest bedrooms on the second floor, airing out the mustiness and changing sheets that still smelled of the lavender sachets Robert used to tease her about. She stocked the upstairs bathroom with fresh towels and checked that the hot water heater could handle the additional demand. In the kitchen, she defrosted a casserole from her freezer, one of dozens that well-meaning neighbors had brought during those first awful weeks after the funeral. Having people to cook for again felt strange but oddly comforting. She even found herself humming while she worked, something she hadn't done since Robert's death. At 10:45 p.m., headlights swept across her front windows. Jenny smoothed her sweater and opened the door to find Lisa standing on her porch, looking older than her 43 years. Her dark hair, once perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and the lines around her brown eyes spoke of recent stress and sleepless nights. Behind Lisa, Marcus unloaded garbage bags and cardboard boxes from a dented Honda Civic that had clearly seen better days. He was taller than Jenny remembered, with broad shoulders that suggested he'd once been in excellent physical condition. Now he moved carefully, favoring his left side in a way that spoke of chronic pain. The twins emerged from the back seat, Emma clutching a worn stuffed animal while Ethan carried a backpack that looked like it contained everything he owned. Both children were quiet, their eyes wide as they took in the large house with its manicured lawn and established neighborhood feel. "Jenny, I can't thank you enough," Lisa said, her embrace brief but seemingly genuine. "This is really saving us." "Don't mention it. Come in, you must be exhausted." Marcus nodded his greeting as he passed with boxes, his handshake firm but his eyes not quite meeting hers. There was something guarded about him, a wariness that went beyond the normal discomfort of accepting charity. Jenny attributed it to pride. She'd seen it before in Robert's construction worker friends who'd fallen on hard times. The twins, however, were different. Emma immediately wrapped Jenny in a hug that reminded her of her own daughter Sarah at that age, while Ethan politely thanked her for letting them stay. Both children were well-mannered despite their circumstances, and Jenny felt a surge of protective affection for them. "You kids must be hungry," Jenny said, leading them toward the kitchen. "I've got some dinner warming up." As they settled around her dining room table, the first time it had been used for an actual meal since Robert's death, Jenny explained the house's routines. She showed them where extra towels were kept, how to work the temperamental washing machine in the basement, and which floorboards creaked if you stepped on them wrong. "I usually do my grocery shopping on Saturdays," she mentioned as they ate. "If you need anything specific, just let me know." "We'll contribute to expenses," Lisa said quickly. "I know having 4 extra people can't be cheap." "Nonsense," Jenny replied. "You're getting back on your feet. That's what matters." But even as she said the words, Jenny noticed the way Lisa's eyes moved around the dining room, taking in the expensive china cabinet, the crystal chandelier, the original hardwood floors. It wasn't quite calculating, but there was an assessment happening that made Jenny slightly uncomfortable. Marcus remained largely quiet throughout dinner, though he complimented Jenny's cooking and helped clear the table without being asked. The twins chattered about their new school, their previous apartment, and their excitement about having their own rooms for the first time in months. "Mom, can we really stay here for a while?" Emma asked, her young voice hopeful. "Just until Daddy Marcus finds a good job," Lisa replied, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Then we'll get our own place again." After dinner, Jenny showed them to their rooms. Lisa and Marcus would share the master guest suite, while the twins each got their own room across the hall. As they settled in, Jenny felt a satisfaction she hadn't experienced in months. The house was alive again, filled with purpose and family. "This is a beautiful home," Lisa said as Jenny showed her where the extra blankets were stored. "Robert really did well for himself." "We did well together," Jenny corrected gently. 28 years of marriage teaches you that everything is shared." Lisa's eyes lingered on the family photos lining the hallway, on the expensive artwork Robert had loved to collect, on the subtle signs of a comfortable life built over decades. "Must be worth quite a bit now with property values going up so much." "I suppose," Jenny replied, though she'd never really thought about the house in terms of dollar signs. "This is home, not an investment." "Of course," Lisa smiled warmly. "Still, it's good to know you're secure, especially living alone." Something in Lisa's tone gave Jenny pause. But before she could analyze it further, Marcus appeared with the last of their belongings. The moment passed, and Jenny attributed her unease to the strangeness of having people in Robert's space again. That night, as Jenny lay in her empty bedroom listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a house with other people in it, doors closing, water running, muffled conversations, she felt something she hadn't experienced since Robert's death: purpose. She was helping family, providing stability for children who needed it, offering a fresh start to people who'd lost their way. She had no idea that Lisa Martinez was lying awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and calculating. The house was even more valuable than she'd imagined. Jenny, living alone and clearly struggling with grief, seemed vulnerable in ways that could be useful. The children provided perfect cover, and Marcus, though he didn't know it yet, would play his role exactly as Lisa needed him to. As Jenny drifted off to sleep for the first time in months feeling truly useful, Lisa was already planning the next phase of what she privately thought of as, quote, the long game. By morning, the real work would begin. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. 6 weeks after Lisa's family moved in, Jenny found herself standing in her own kitchen at 7:30 a.m., holding a cup of coffee that had been made too weak for her taste. Watching Lisa reorganize the spice cabinet with the efficiency of someone who'd appointed herself household manager. "The oregano was completely stale," Lisa announced without turning around. "I threw it out and picked up fresh herbs yesterday. You really should be more careful about checking expiration dates. At our age, we can't be too cautious about food safety." Jenny frowned. She'd bought that oregano just 2 months ago, and it had been perfectly fine. But when she'd started to say so yesterday, Lisa had looked at her with such gentle concern, suggesting that Jenny might be forgetting when she'd purchased things, that Jenny had begun to doubt her own memory. "I could have sworn that oregano was new," Jenny said tentatively. "Oh, honey." Lisa's voice carried the patient tone of someone explaining something obvious to a child. The bottle was dusty, and the color was completely faded. Memory can play tricks on us, especially during stressful times like grief. The comment stung, particularly because Jenny had been having moments of forgetfulness lately. Nothing major. Misplacing her reading glasses, momentarily forgetting where she'd put her car keys, but enough to make her question herself when Lisa pointed out these supposed memory lapses. Marcus emerged from the basement, wiping his hands on a rag. "Fixed that loose step on the basement stairs," he announced, helping himself to coffee from the pot Lisa had brewed. "Could have been dangerous if someone fell." Jenny blinked. "I didn't know there was a loose step." "Very loose," Marcus nodded seriously. "I'm surprised you hadn't noticed. Been working on it for the past hour." The twins thundered down the stairs, backpacks slung over their shoulders, already dressed for school. Emma grabbed a piece of toast from the plate Lisa had prepared, while Ethan gulped down orange juice. "Thanks for breakfast, Aunt Jenny," Emma said, giving Jenny a quick hug. "Your mom made breakfast," Jenny corrected automatically, though she felt strange having to clarify who was cooking in her own kitchen. "Mom, Lisa says you've been forgetting to eat regular meals," Ethan said with the blunt honesty of a 12-year-old. "She's making sure you stay healthy." Jenny looked at Lisa, who was wiping already clean counters with focused determination. "I haven't been forgetting to eat. Yesterday you said you weren't hungry at dinner time," Lisa replied smoothly. "The day before, I found you eating crackers for lunch instead of a real meal. It's understandable. Grief affects appetite. But we need to make sure you're taking care of yourself." Had she said she wasn't hungry? Jenny tried to remember, but the past few weeks felt like a blur of adjusting to having people in her space, of conversations that seemed to happen around her rather than with her. After the twins left for school and Marcus headed out to look for work, Jenny announced, "I think I'll drive to the bank today. I need to review some of Robert's accounts." Lisa looked up from the dishwasher she was loading, another task that had somehow become hers to manage. "Oh, I was at the bank yesterday when I deposited your pension check. The teller mentioned they have new online banking features that might be easier for you to manage." Jenny's hand froze on her purse strap. "You deposited my pension check?" "You left it on the kitchen counter with your deposit slips," Lisa said, continuing to load dishes. "I assumed you wanted me to handle it since you've seemed so overwhelmed with financial paperwork lately." "I wasn't overwhelmed, I was organizing everything." Lisa's expression shifted to gentle concern. "Jenny, honey, yesterday you spent 20 minutes looking for your checkbook. It was in your hand the entire time." The words hit Jenny like a slap. She had spent time looking for her checkbook yesterday, but had it really been in her hand? The memory felt fuzzy, uncertain. "There's no shame in needing help," Lisa continued, her voice warm but firm. "Robert wouldn't want you struggling with things that stress you out unnecessarily." That afternoon, Jenny drove to her neighbor Carol Peterson's house, despite Lisa's suggestion that the old Subaru might need a tune-up before any long drives. Carol, a retired teacher who'd lived next door for 8 years, took one look at Jenny's face and put the kettle on for tea. "You look troubled, dear," Carol said, settling into her cozy living room that felt refreshingly normal after weeks of subtle changes in her own home. Jenny found herself describing the past 6 weeks. The small shifts in routine, the gentle corrections of her memory, the way Lisa had somehow become the household's unofficial coordinator. As she spoke, Carol's expression grew increasingly concerned. Jenny, listen to yourself, Carol said finally. You're describing your own home like you're a boarder paying rent. It's not that dramatic, Jenny protested. They're helping. Helping or taking over? Carol leaned forward. When's the last time you made a decision about your own house without Lisa's input? Jenny opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. When had she last chosen what to cook for dinner? What television program to watch? Even what time to eat meals? She means well, Jenny said weakly. She's just trying to help me adjust. Or maybe she's trying to adjust you? Carol's eyes were sharp with concern. You managed this household perfectly well for 15 years. You've been handling Robert's estate, dealing with lawyers and insurance companies. Does that sound like someone who needs a keeper? As Jenny drove home, Carol's words echoed in her mind. The Subaru ran smoothly, as it always had. She navigated the familiar streets without hesitation, her mind sharp and focused. By the time she pulled into her driveway, something had crystallized in her chest. A small, hard kernel of certainty. She wasn't losing her mind. She was losing control of her own life. Inside, Lisa was setting the table, humming softly. She looked up as Jenny entered, and for just a moment, Jenny caught something in her expression that hadn't been there before. Satisfaction, perhaps. Or ownership. "How was your visit with Carol?" Lisa asked pleasantly. "Enlightening," Jenny replied, and felt a small thrill when Lisa's smile flickered almost imperceptibly. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, a meal Lisa had planned, prepared, and served, Jenny began to pay attention in ways she hadn't before. She noticed how Lisa's eyes moved around the room, cataloging and assessing. She noticed how Marcus deferred to Lisa on every household decision, even ones that affected Jenny directly. She noticed how the twins, sweet as they were, had begun asking Lisa for permission to do things in Jenny's house. Most importantly, she noticed how Lisa spoke about future plans as if they were permanent residents rather than temporary guests. "I was thinking we should get the carpets professionally cleaned next month," Lisa said, cutting into her chicken. "The one in the living room is looking a bit worn, and with the kids running around. I had the carpets cleaned 6 months ago," Jenny said quietly. "Did you?" Lisa's tone carried just the right note of surprise. "They don't look professionally done. Maybe the company didn't do a thorough job." Jenny stared at her sister-in-law, remembering clearly the weekend she'd spent moving furniture and supervising the carpet cleaning crew. But Lisa's expression was so genuinely puzzled, so concerned, that for a moment Jenny wondered if she was misremembering again. Then she caught Marcus watching the exchange with uncomfortable recognition in his eyes, and she realized something that chilled her to the bone. This wasn't the first time Lisa had done this to someone. After dinner, Jenny excused herself to her bedroom, the only space in the house that still felt entirely hers. She sat on the edge of the bed she'd shared with Robert for 15 years and tried to process what was happening to her life. Lisa was rewriting reality, one gentle correction at a time. Every suggestion that Jenny was forgetful, every insistence that she needed help with basic tasks, every takeover of household management was designed to make Jenny doubt her own competence. But why? What did Lisa hope to gain? Jenny looked around the bedroom, at the photos of her and Robert's life together, at the house they'd worked so hard to afford and maintain. The house that was now worth nearly 3 times what they'd paid for it. The house where an elderly widow lived alone, apparently struggling with grief and memory issues. The house that someone might argue needed better management, more competent oversight, perhaps even a guardian to make important decisions. As laughter drifted up from the living room below, Lisa's voice dominant among the others, Jenny began to understand the true scope of what she was facing. This wasn't family helping family during a difficult time. Howler, this was the beginning of a very sophisticated theft. 3 months after Lisa's family had moved in, Jenny's world shifted completely when she walked into her own kitchen on a gray Thursday morning in November to find Lisa sitting at the breakfast table with a manila folder, wearing an expression Jenny had never seen before, cold, businesslike, and utterly devoid of the sisterly concern that had become her trademark. "Jenny, we need to have a serious conversation," Lisa said, her voice carrying an authority that made Jenny pause and reaching for her coffee mug. Something in Lisa's tone sent warning bells through Jenny's mind. She'd been more observant these past few weeks, documenting her own activities and checking Lisa's claims against reality. The pattern of manipulation was becoming impossible to ignore, but she hadn't expected Lisa to drop her helpful facade so suddenly. About what? Jenny asked, settling into her chair with deliberate calm. Lisa opened the folder, revealing a stack of papers covered in dense text that made Jenny's stomach drop. About formalizing our living arrangement. About making this situation work for everyone involved. Jenny's eyes scanned the top document, residential lease agreement in bold letters, followed by terms and conditions that made her blood run cold. Monthly rent, $2,500. Tenant responsibilities, landlord obligations, property management fees. I don't understand, Jenny said, though she was beginning to understand all too well. It's really quite straightforward. Lisa's voice carried the patience of someone explaining basic mathematics to a slow student. We've been living here for 3 months now, contributing significantly to the household operations. Marcus has completed over $3,000 worth of repairs and maintenance. I've been handling all the domestic management, ensuring you take your medications properly, managing the household budget, coordinating with service providers. Jenny stared at the papers, her hands beginning to tremble. You've been helping. I thought you were helping. We have been helping, Lisa said smoothly. But we need to face reality, Jenny. This arrangement can't continue indefinitely without some legal framework to protect everyone's interests. You're 62 years old, living alone in a house you can't properly maintain by yourself anymore. The age comment was deliberate and cruel. Jenny was perfectly capable of maintaining her home, and Lisa knew it. But the subtle campaign of undermining Jenny's confidence had been building toward this moment. What exactly are you asking for? Jenny's voice was steady, though her heart was racing. Lisa pulled out a second sheet of paper, this one itemizing costs and services. I've calculated our contributions over the past 3 months. Household management, maintenance work, personal care assistance, property oversight. It comes to approximately $2,500 monthly in value provided. Jenny felt the room spinning. You want me to pay you rent to live in my own house? Think of it as a fair exchange, Lisa said, her tone maddeningly reasonable. You receive full-service property management and personal assistance. We receive housing and fair compensation for our services. Everyone benefits. The kitchen door opened and Marcus entered. His timing so perfect that Jenny suddenly realized he'd been waiting outside, listening. His face was uncomfortable but resigned, and he nodded at Lisa with the look of someone following a script they'd rehearsed. Marcus agrees this is the best solution, Lisa continued. We can't continue living here without some security, some assurance that we won't be asked to leave suddenly. And frankly, Jenny, you need the help we're providing more than you're willing to admit. I don't need help managing my own home, Jenny said. But even as she spoke, she could hear how the words would sound to an outsider after months of Lisa's careful documentation of her supposed failings. Yesterday you couldn't find your reading glasses for an hour, Marcus said quietly, clearly reciting a prepared line. They were hanging around your neck. The day before that, you forgot you'd already taken your blood pressure medication and nearly took a double dose, Lisa added. I had to stop you. Jenny wanted to protest, but she couldn't clearly remember either incident. Had her glasses been around her neck? Had she almost taken extra medication? Lisa's constant gentle corrections had created a fog of uncertainty around her own memories. Look, Marcus said, shifting uncomfortably, we're not trying to be difficult, but we need some kind of legal protection. We've been living here for months, we've contributed labor and money to improve the property. In Connecticut, after 90 days of continuous residence with the owner's permission, tenants acquire certain rights. The words hit Jenny like ice water. Rights. Tenant rights. Squatters' rights. She'd heard of cases where people moved into properties and became impossible to remove through legal technicalities. If we don't formalize this arrangement, Lisa said, her voice dropping to a more intimate register, things could get very complicated. Very expensive for everyone involved. Legal battles, court costs, The emotional strain on the family, especially on Emma and Ethan. The mention of the twins was calculated and cruel. Jenny had grown attached to the children, who seemed genuinely innocent in their grandparents' scheme. The thought of them being traumatized by a legal battle was painful, and Lisa knew it. "What if I refuse?" Jenny asked quietly. The silence that followed was loaded with threat. Finally, Lisa sighed with theatrical regret. "Jenny, we've established residency here. We've contributed substantially to the property's maintenance and improvement. If you tried to force us out without proper legal procedures, which can take months, even years, well, that would be very stressful for everyone. Very expensive, too." Jenny felt trapped in her own kitchen, in her own home. The walls seemed to be closing in around her as she realized the full scope of Lisa's plan. This hadn't been a desperate call for help from family members in crisis. This had been a carefully orchestrated invasion. "I need time to think about this," Jenny said. "Of course," Lisa's smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Take all the time you need." "But Jenny," she leaned forward, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper, "remember that family is supposed to take care of family. Sometimes taking care means making hard decisions, accepting help even when pride wants to refuse it." The back door opened and Emma burst in, her school backpack bouncing as she ran to hug Jenny around the waist. "Aunt Jenny, guess what? I got an A on my science project." Jenny hugged the girl, feeling the innocence and genuine affection in the embrace, while her world crumbled around her. Emma had no idea what her mother was doing, no concept of the adult manipulation unfolding in the kitchen, where she'd eaten breakfast every morning for 3 months. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Jenny managed, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "Mom, Lisa helped me with the research," Emma continued excitedly. "She's so smart about everything. She says you're lucky to have us here to help take care of things." Over Emma's head, Jenny met Lisa's eyes and saw the satisfaction there. Even the children were being used as weapons in this campaign, their innocent comments weaponized to reinforce the narrative that Jenny needed caretaking. After Emma ran upstairs to change clothes, Lisa began clearing away the lease documents. "I know this is a lot to process," she said with false sympathy, "but it's really the best solution for everyone. You get the help you need, we get the security we deserve, and the children get stability." That evening, Jenny sat alone in her bedroom, the only space that still felt entirely hers, and tried to process the magnitude of what had just happened. The lease agreement sat on her nightstand like a coiled snake, its terms echoing in her mind. $2,500 per month to live in her own home. Legal protections for people who had moved in under false pretenses. Tenant rights that could keep them there indefinitely. She thought about calling her daughter Sarah in Seattle, but what would she say? That she'd allowed her late husband's sister to move in and now felt trapped? That she was being gaslit and manipulated but couldn't prove it? That she might be forced to pay rent in her own home? Sarah would want to help, but she was 3,000 miles away with her own family and responsibilities. And Lisa had been careful to document every supposed instance of Jenny's forgetfulness, every moment of confusion she'd allegedly witnessed. Who would believe Jenny's word against carefully maintained records? As Jenny stared out her bedroom window at the neighborhood she'd called home for 15 years, she realized that Lisa had made one crucial miscalculation. She'd assumed that Jenny would be too confused, too weak, too overwhelmed by grief to fight back effectively. But Jenny Andrew had survived her husband's sudden death, managed his estate, and maintained a household and property worth over $800,000. She'd raised 2 successful children and built a life through determination and intelligence. Lisa had declared war, but she'd underestimated her opponent. Jenny reached for her laptop and began researching Connecticut tenant law, property rights, and elder abuse statutes. If Lisa wanted to play legal games, Jenny would learn the rules better than anyone. Right. The war Lisa had started was about to take a turn she never saw coming. 2 weeks after Lisa's ultimatum, Jenny Andrew sat in the law office of Rebecca Harrison, the most respected family attorney in Hartford County. The manila folder on the desk between them contained copies of Lisa's lease agreement, photographs Jenny had secretly taken of her supposedly broken basement step that Marcus had fixed, and a detailed journal documenting every manipulation attempt over the past month. "Mrs. Andrew," Rebecca said, reviewing the documents with a furrowed brow, "what you're describing is a textbook case of elder abuse, financial and psychological manipulation designed to gain control of your property." Rebecca Harrison was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in elder law and had seen every variation of family manipulation imaginable. Her office walls were lined with degrees and awards, but more importantly, with thank-you letters from elderly clients she'd helped protect their assets and dignity. "But can they really force me to pay rent in my own home?" Jenny asked, voicing the fear that had kept her awake for 2 weeks. "Not legally, no, but they're relying on psychological pressure and your unfamiliarity with tenant law." Rebecca flipped through the pages Jenny had printed from her research. "However, they have done their homework. Connecticut does have strong tenant protection laws, and they've been careful to establish what looks like legitimate residency." Jenny's heart sank. "So they can stay indefinitely?" "Not necessarily. The key issue is the nature of their original arrangement with you. They came as emergency guests, not tenants. There was no lease, no rent paid, and no agreement establishing a landlord-tenant relationship." Rebecca leaned forward. "But we need to document this properly, and we need to do it fast." Over the next hour, Rebecca outlined Jenny's legal options. A formal eviction process would take months and cost thousands of dollars, especially if Lisa and Marcus fought it. Worse, they could claim that Jenny's supposed memory issues made any eviction notice invalid, potentially tying up the case in competency hearings. "There is another option," Rebecca said carefully. "We gather evidence of their true intentions, document the manipulation campaign, and present them with a counter-ultimatum that makes staying here extremely unattractive." "What kind of counter-ultimatum?" Rebecca smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "We make them an offer they'll want to refuse. But first, we need proof of what they're really doing." That afternoon, Jenny stopped by Dr. Patricia Morse's office for what she told Lisa was a routine follow-up appointment. Dr. Morse had been Jenny's physician for 12 years and knew her medical history intimately. "Jenny, I have to ask, has anyone expressed concerns about your mental acuity lately?" Dr. Morse asked after completing a thorough examination. "Why do you ask?" "Because I received a very unusual call yesterday. Someone claiming to be a concerned family member suggested you might need a cognitive evaluation. They mentioned memory issues, confusion about medications, difficulty managing daily tasks." Jenny's blood ran cold. "Lisa called you?" The caller didn't identify themselves, but they knew enough about your situation to be convincing. "They suggested I might want to evaluate your competency to make financial decisions." Dr. Morse's expression was stern. "Jenny, your cognitive function is excellent. Your blood pressure is well controlled, your reflexes are normal, and you show no signs of memory impairment whatsoever. Can you document that?" "Already done. I'm running a comprehensive cognitive assessment battery just to have it on record. If anyone tries to challenge your mental competency, this evaluation will shut them down immediately." After leaving the doctor's office, Jenny drove to the Hartford County Social Services Building, where she met with Margaret Walsh, a social worker, who specialized in elder abuse cases. Margaret listened to Jenny's story with growing anger. "Mrs. Andrew, what you're describing is a pattern we see regularly. Family members move in under the guise of helping, then systematically undermine the elderly person's confidence while positioning themselves as indispensable caregivers." Margaret pulled out a thick file. "The goal is usually one of 3 things: gaining access to the person's finances, taking control of their property, or positioning themselves to inherit everything when the person dies." How common is this? More common than most people realize. And it's often family members who are the perpetrators, because they have access and trust. Margaret's expression hardened. "The good news is that Connecticut takes elder abuse very seriously. If we can document what they're doing, we have several legal tools available." That evening, Jenny implemented the first phase of Rebecca Harrison's plan. She installed a small digital recorder in her kitchen, hidden inside a decorative container Lisa had never shown interest in. She also began keeping detailed written logs of every conversation, every helpful suggestion, and every attempt to undermine her memory or decision-making. The documentation proved even more damning than she'd expected. "Jenny, you seem confused about the electric bill again," Lisa said the next morning, her voice carrying its familiar tone of patient concern. "You thought you'd already paid it, but I found the notice in yesterday's mail. It's past due." Jenny activated the recorder with a subtle movement. "I paid that bill online 3 days ago. I have the confirmation number." "Are you sure? Sometimes online banking can be tricky for people our age. Maybe the payment didn't go through properly. I'll call the electric company to confirm. That's probably wise. But Jenny, this is exactly what I'm talking about. These little mix-ups. The confusion about whether things were done or not done. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But it's why you need help managing these details." Later that day, Jenny called Connecticut Electric. The bill had been paid in full, exactly as she remembered. She documented the conversation and added it to her growing file of evidence. The pattern continued throughout the week. Lisa would claim Jenny had forgotten to do something, suggest she was confused about basic facts, or insist that incidents had happened that Jenny couldn't remember. Each time, Jenny quietly verified the truth and documented Lisa's lies. The breakthrough came when Jenny discovered Lisa's journal. While Lisa was at the grocery store using Jenny's credit card, another unauthorized appropriation that had become routine, Jenny searched the guest bedroom. Hidden in Lisa's suitcase, she found a small notebook filled with dated entries. November 3rd, Jay forgot to turn off the stove after making tea. Safety concern. November 5th, Jay couldn't remember conversation we had about changing banks. Cognitive decline progressing. November 8th, Jay confused about whether she'd taken morning medication. Had to intervene. None of these incidents had actually occurred. Jenny had never forgotten to turn off the stove, never discussed changing banks, and had never been confused about her medication. Lisa was creating a fictional record of mental decline, building a case for Jenny's incompetency, one fabricated entry at a time. Jenny photographed every page with her phone, her hands shaking with fury as she read lie after lie designed to steal her independence and her home. That evening, she called Rebecca Harrison. "We have them," Rebecca said after reviewing the photos. "This journal is evidence of a deliberate campaign to create false documentation of incompetency. Combined with your doctor's evaluation and the recordings you've made, we have a solid case for elder abuse. What's our next move?" "We spring our trap. Tomorrow morning you're going to present Lisa with a revised lease agreement of your own. But this one will have terms that expose exactly what they're really after." Jenny smiled for the first time in weeks. "What kind of terms?" "The kind that will make them show their true colors. And once they do, we'll have everything we need to not only evict them, but potentially pursue criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud." As Jenny hung up the phone, she felt a surge of anticipation. Lisa had been playing chess while thinking Jenny was only capable of checkers. Tomorrow, Lisa would discover that Jenny had been planning several moves ahead all along. The hunters were about to become the hunted. Friday morning arrived with an unseasonable warmth that felt like an omen. Jenny Andrew sat at her kitchen table, a fresh cup of coffee, made exactly the way she preferred it, steaming beside her as she reviewed the documents Rebecca Harrison had prepared. Today was the day she would turn the tables on Lisa Martinez, and everything had to be perfect. The counter-lease agreement sat in front of her, looking deceptively similar to the document Lisa had presented 2 weeks earlier. But the terms hidden within its legal language would expose Lisa's true motivations and force her into an impossible position. At exactly 9 a.m., as Lisa emerged from her morning routine of reorganizing Jenny's kitchen cabinets, Jenny cleared her throat. "Lisa, I've given your lease proposal serious consideration, and I've decided you're absolutely right. We do need to formalize our arrangement." Lisa's face lit up with satisfaction, the expression of someone who believed their manipulation had finally succeeded. "I'm so glad you see the wisdom in this, Jenny. It really is the best solution for everyone. I've had my attorney review your proposal and make some modifications," Jenny continued, sliding the new document across the table. "I think you'll find the terms quite reasonable." Lisa picked up the papers eagerly, her eyes scanning the first page with growing excitement. Then she reached the revised terms, and Jenny watched with dark satisfaction as her sister-in-law's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to something approaching panic. $10,000 per month? Lisa's voice cracked. Jenny, there must be some mistake. No mistake at all, Jenny replied calmly. You said you wanted fair market value for housing and services. This is a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom colonial home in one of Connecticut's most desirable neighborhoods. The rental market value for a property of this caliber is actually closer to $12,000 per month, so I'm giving you quite a discount. Marcus appeared in the doorway, clearly drawn by the tension in Lisa's voice. His face went pale as he saw the document in her hands. But we can't afford $10,000 a month, Marcus stammered. Lisa's disability payments are only $800, and I'm still looking for steady work. That's unfortunate, Jenny said, her tone carrying the same false sympathy Lisa had used on her for months. But as you explained to me, this arrangement needs to be a fair exchange. You receive housing, utilities, food, and the use of all my furniture and appliances. I receive appropriate compensation. Lisa's hands were shaking as she flipped through the pages. These other terms: professional property management certification required for all household management services, background checks, financial disclosure statements. Standard requirements for any legitimate property management arrangement, Jenny explained. Surely you wouldn't object to proving you're qualified for the responsibilities you've assumed? The truth was, Rebecca Harrison had crafted these terms specifically to expose the holes in Lisa's story. Any legitimate caregiver would have proper certifications. Any honest property manager would welcome financial transparency. The requirements were reasonable for someone actually providing professional services, but impossible for someone running a con game. And this clause about medical documentation, Marcus read aloud, his voice growing more strained. All claims about the property owner's cognitive state must be substantiated by licensed medical professionals with written evaluations. Jenny smiled. After all your concerns about my memory and decision-making abilities, I thought it wise to establish clear medical standards. Dr. Morse has provided a comprehensive cognitive evaluation confirming my complete mental competency. Perhaps you could provide similar documentation supporting your observations about my supposed forgetfulness? The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Jenny could practically see the wheels turning in Lisa's mind, calculating how to respond to this unexpected reversal. Jenny, Lisa said finally, her voice taking on the wheedling tone of someone whose careful plans were crumbling. This isn't what we discussed. We're family. Family doesn't charge family market rate rent. You're absolutely right, Jenny agreed. Family doesn't charge family rent at all. Family helps each other out of love, not for profit. But you were the one who insisted on turning this into a business arrangement. Emma and Ethan chose that moment to bound down the stairs, their young voices cutting through the adult tension like knives. They stopped short when they saw the adults huddled around papers, their mother's face flushed and angry. "What's wrong, Mom Lisa?" Emma asked, using the name that had always made Jenny's heart ache a little. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart," Lisa said, though her voice was tight with strain. "Aunt Jenny and I are just discussing some grown-up paperwork." Jenny felt a pang of guilt as she looked at the children, but she pushed it aside. Emma and Ethan were innocent victims in this situation, but allowing Lisa to continue her manipulation would ultimately hurt them more. They deserved better than being raised by someone who taught them that theft and deception were acceptable family behaviors. "Actually," Jenny said gently, "your mom and I are figuring out what's going to happen next. You see, when your family moved in here, it was supposed to be temporary, just until you got back on your feet. But now your mom wants to make it permanent by paying rent to live here." Ethan's face scrunched in confusion. "But Mom Lisa said this was going to be our home now. She said you needed us to take care of you because you get confused about stuff." The innocent comment hit the kitchen like a bomb. Lisa's face went white as she realized her 12-year-old son had just exposed the lies she'd been telling the children about Jenny's supposed mental decline. "Ethan, go get your backpack," Lisa snapped. "You're going to be late for school." But Jenny was already moving. "Actually, kids, why don't you sit down for a minute? I think it's time we cleared up some confusion." She looked directly at the twins, her voice gentle but clear. I want you to know that I'm perfectly healthy, both physically and mentally. I don't get confused about things, and I don't need anyone to take care of me. Dr. Morse confirmed this just yesterday. Emma's eyes widened. But Mom, Lisa said you forget to eat and get mixed up about your medicine. Your mom was mistaken, Jenny said carefully. Sometimes adults say things that aren't quite true when they're worried or stressed. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and I care about both of you very much. Lisa shot to her feet, her composure finally cracking completely. You have no right to involve the children in this. They don't understand the complexities of adult relationships. The only complexity here, Jenny said, rising to match Lisa's stance, is figuring out how long you've been planning this scheme. Was it from the moment you called me that night in September? Or did you start planning this back when you helped yourself to your Aunt Dorothy's house 3 years ago? The reference to Dorothy Martinez, Marcus's elderly aunt who had mysteriously gifted her house to Lisa before being moved to a nursing home, hit its target perfectly. Lisa's face went through several shades of pale before settling on a sickly gray. I don't know what you're talking about, Lisa whispered. I think you do. Rebecca Harrison is quite thorough in her background research. Dorothy Martinez, aged 79, diagnosed with dementia by a doctor she'd never seen before, declared incompetent to manage her affairs, and coincidentally signed over her property to her loving niece just days before being admitted to Sunset Manor nursing home. Marcus slumped into a chair, his face in his hands. Lisa, you said Dorothy wanted to give us the house. You said she was happy to help family. She was. Lisa's voice was desperate now. Dorothy was confused. She couldn't take care of herself anymore. We were helping her. By stealing her home and putting her in a facility where she died 6 months later? Jenny's voice was ice cold. The same way you planned to help me? The twins looked back and forth between the adults, their young faces reflecting confusion and growing fear. Emma started to cry quietly, and Ethan moved closer to his sister protectively. Jenny's heart broke for them, but she pressed on. So here's what's going to happen. You have exactly 24 hours to decide whether you want to sign this lease agreement at fair market rate, with all the professional requirements and background checks included, or whether you'd prefer to make alternative living arrangements. You can't just throw us out, Marcus said weakly. We have rights. We've been living here for months. As invited guests who overstayed their welcome, Jenny corrected. And if you'd like to test those supposed tenant rights in court, I have recordings of you admitting this was never a rental arrangement, photographs of the fake repairs you claimed to make, copies of the journal where Lisa documented incidents that never happened, and medical testimony about my complete mental competency. She paused, letting the implications sink in. I also have Rebecca Harrison on retainer, and she's very interested in discussing Dorothy Martinez's case with the Hartford County District Attorney's Office. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to catch. Lisa's elaborate con game was unraveling, and everyone in the kitchen knew it. 24 hours, Jenny repeated. $10,000 per month with full documentation and background checks, or you find somewhere else to live. Your choice. As the twins finally left for school and Marcus retreated to the basement in defeat, Lisa remained at the kitchen table, staring at the lease agreement that had just destroyed her carefully laid plans. Jenny poured herself another cup of coffee and settled back into her chair, feeling a sense of power and control she hadn't experienced in months. The war was far from over, but the first major battle had just been won decisively. The 24 hours that followed Jenny's ultimatum felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. From her bedroom window, Jenny observed Lisa pacing the backyard while having increasingly frantic phone conversations, her voice carrying through the autumn air in desperate fragments. Can't be legal. She's obviously been manipulated by someone. Need emergency intervention. By Saturday afternoon, Lisa's desperation had reached a new level. Jenny found her sister-in-law in the living room, surrounded by printed documents and legal websites pulled up on Marcus's old laptop. Jenny, I've been researching your rights, Lisa announced with the false confidence of someone grasping at straws. What you're doing? Suddenly changing the terms of our arrangement, threatening us with eviction. It's elder abuse. You're being manipulated by that attorney into making decisions against your own best interests. Jenny settled into Robert's favorite armchair, marveling at Lisa's audacity. Interesting theory. Who exactly do you think is manipulating me? It's obvious someone has gotten to you. Rebecca Harrison, probably. Lawyers like her prey on vulnerable, elderly people, convince them to make irrational decisions that benefit the attorney's bank account. Lisa's voice was gaining momentum, as if saying the words aloud might make them true. The Jenny I know would never threaten to throw her own family out on the street. The Jenny you know? Jenny's voice was dangerously quiet. Lisa, you've been living in my house for 4 months. In all that time, when exactly did you get to know me? Between documenting my supposed memory lapses in that journal of yours, or while you were calling my doctor to have me declared incompetent? Lisa's face flushed. I was concerned about your welfare. You've been exhibiting signs of cognitive decline. Stop. Jenny's voice cut through the lies like a blade. We both know that's not true, but since you seem so concerned about my mental state, I have some good news. Dr. Morse completed that comprehensive evaluation you suggested. Jenny pulled out a manila folder from beside her chair. She'd learned the power of dramatic document reveals from watching Lisa operate. According to this psychological assessment, my cognitive function scores in the superior range for my age group. Memory, reasoning, decision-making abilities, all excellent. She watched Lisa's face crumble as the final pillar of her manipulation campaign collapsed. Dr. Morse was particularly interested in your anonymous phone call suggesting I needed competency evaluation. She's documented it as a potential case of psychological abuse by a family member. Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd aged a decade in 24 hours. His face was haggard, and his hands shook slightly as he spoke. Lisa, maybe we should just go. Find an apartment, start over somewhere else. With what money? Lisa snapped. My disability check won't cover first month's rent and security deposit on anything decent. And who's going to rent to us with your employment history? The mask was fully off now. Gone was the caring sister-in-law worried about Jenny's well-being. In her place stood a woman whose elaborate scheme had been exposed, leaving her facing homelessness and potential criminal charges. There might be another option, Jenny said quietly. Both Lisa and Marcus turned to her with desperate hope. I spoke with Margaret Walsh at Social Services yesterday. She mentioned there are several programs designed to help families in transition. Temporary housing assistance, job placement services, support for families with children. What's the catch? Lisa asked suspiciously. No catch, just honesty. You'd need to acknowledge that your living situation here was temporary emergency housing, not a legitimate rental arrangement. You'd need to cooperate with social services and possibly law enforcement if they have questions about your previous living situations. The reference to Dorothy Martinez hung in the air like a sword. Lisa's eyes darted between Jenny and Marcus, calculating whether this was a genuine offer or another trap. And if we refuse? Marcus asked. Then you have until tomorrow morning to either sign the lease agreement at $10,000 per month or vacate the premises. After that, I file formal eviction proceedings and refer the elder abuse evidence to the district attorney's office. Emma and Ethan chose that moment to burst through the front door, their arms full of Halloween decorations from a school party. The sight of the children, innocent and oblivious to the adult drama destroying their stability, seemed to break something in Marcus. We'll take the social services option, he said quietly, ignoring Lisa's sharp intake of breath. The kids don't deserve this uncertainty. Marcus, you can't just, Lisa began. I can and I am. His voice carried a finality that surprised everyone, including himself. This ends now, Lisa. No more schemes, no more lies, no more taking advantage of people who tried to help us. That evening, as Lisa furiously packed their belongings, Jenny sat with Emma and Ethan in the living room, trying to explain what was happening in terms they could understand. Are we in trouble, Aunt Jenny? Emma asked, her voice small and frightened. No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble at all. Sometimes adults make choices that create problems, and then other adults have to help fix those problems. Your dad, Marcus, is making a good choice right now by getting help for your family. But Mom Lisa says you're being mean to us, Ethan said, confusion clear in his young voice. Jenny chose her words carefully. Your mom is upset because she made some mistakes, and now she has to face the consequences. That's hard for anyone. But getting help from people whose job it is to help families isn't mean. It's actually very smart. She pulled both children close. I want you to remember something very important. None of this is your fault. Adults sometimes do things that don't make sense to kids, but that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grateful but pained. Kids, go help your mom finish packing. We're leaving first thing in the morning. After the twins reluctantly headed upstairs, Marcus sat down across from Jenny. I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you a lot more than that. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. I knew what Lisa was doing was wrong. Maybe not at first, but certainly after the first few weeks. I saw her manipulating you, undermining your confidence, documenting things that never happened. And I went along with it because I was scared and desperate and thought maybe, just maybe, it would work out somehow. Jenny studied his face, seeing genuine remorse there. What changed your mind? The kids, he said simply. Listening to them repeat Lisa's lies about you being confused and forgetful. Hearing my own children being turned into weapons in her manipulation campaign. I couldn't do it anymore. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of complete exhaustion. Dorothy Martinez was a good woman. She helped us when we had nowhere else to go, and Lisa convinced me she was doing it willingly. I didn't know about the fake dementia diagnosis until it was too late. By then, Dorothy was in the nursing home, and Lisa had control of everything. What happened to Dorothy? She died 6 months later, still asking for Lisa to visit, still thinking we were family who cared about her. His voice broke slightly. Lisa never went to see her, said it was too depressing. The enormity of Lisa's cruelty hit Jenny like a physical blow. Dorothy Martinez had died alone, confused and abandoned by the people she'd tried to help, never understanding why her loving family had disappeared once they got what they wanted. I won't let that happen again, Marcus said firmly. Whatever consequences I face for my part in this, I deserve them. But Emma and Ethan deserve better than being raised by someone who sees elderly people as opportunities instead of human beings. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold, matching the mood in the house. Lisa moved through the final packing with mechanical efficiency, her face a mask of controlled fury. She hadn't spoken to Jenny since accepting the social services option, communicating only through Marcus or brief, clipped instructions to the children. As they loaded the last boxes into their car, Emma ran back to hug Jenny one final time. Will we see you again, Aunt Jenny? I hope so, sweetheart. And remember, if you ever need anything at all, you can always call me. Ethan shook her hand solemnly, displaying the formal politeness of a child trying to be adult in a situation he didn't fully understand. Thank you for letting us stay here, Aunt Jenny. I'm sorry if we caused you problems. The maturity in his 12-year-old voice nearly broke Jenny's heart. These children had been through more upheaval in their young lives than most adults faced, yet they maintained their sweetness and resilience. Marcus was the last to say goodbye. Thank you, he said simply, for giving us a chance to do the right thing, even after everything that happened. Take care of those children, Jenny replied. They're good kids. They are, and I promise you, they're going to stay that way. Lisa never said goodbye. She sat in the passenger seat of their overloaded Honda, staring straight ahead as Marcus backed out of the driveway. At the last moment, she turned to look back at the house she'd tried to steal, and Jenny caught a glimpse of something that might have been regret. Or it might have been rage at getting caught. War is there. As the car disappeared down the street, Jenny stood alone on her front porch for the first time in 4 months. The autumn air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. Her house was hers again, completely and unquestionably. But as she looked at the empty rooms and listened to the silence that seemed both peaceful and lonely, Jenny realized that winning this war had come with costs she was only beginning to understand. The hardest part wasn't over yet. Now she had to figure out how to live with the victory. 3 weeks after Lisa's family departed, Jenny Andrew discovered that victory could be more complicated than defeat. She sat in her pristine kitchen, surrounded by the silence she'd fought so hard to reclaim, reading an email that made her stomach churn with a mixture of satisfaction and dread. The subject line was stark. Hartford County DA investigation update. District Attorney Rachel Stone had opened a formal investigation into Lisa Martinez, based on the evidence Jenny had provided. The Dorothy Martinez case was being reopened, and they'd found 2 other elderly victims with similar stories of family manipulation and property theft. Lisa's pattern of elder abuse stretched back almost a decade, affecting at least 4 families that investigators had identified so far. Mrs. Andrew, the email continued, we may need you to testify in criminal proceedings. The evidence you gathered is crucial to establishing a pattern of predatory behavior that could put Ms. Martinez behind bars for several years. Jenny set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. She'd wanted justice, had wanted to protect other potential victims, but the reality of sending Lisa to prison felt heavier than she'd anticipated. Somewhere in the city, Emma and Ethan were trying to adjust to yet another upheaval in their young lives. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. Margaret Walsh from Social Services was calling with an update that complicated everything further. Mrs. Andrew, I wanted to give you a heads up about the Martinez family situation. Marcus and the children are doing well in temporary housing, but we've encountered some problems with Lisa. Jenny's heart sank. What kind of problems? She's been uncooperative with the investigation, hostile towards social workers, and… Margaret paused. She's been telling Emma and Ethan that you're the reason they can't go home, that you're trying to hurt their family because you're jealous and lonely. The words hit Jenny like a physical blow. She'd tried so hard to protect the children from the adult conflict, but Lisa was weaponizing them, even from a distance. How are the kids handling it? Emma's been having nightmares. Ethan's grades have dropped significantly since starting at his new school. Marcus is doing his best, but he's overwhelmed trying to manage everything while looking for work and dealing with Lisa's manipulation of the children. That afternoon, Jenny made a decision that surprised even herself. She drove to the address Margaret had provided, a modest apartment complex on the south side of Hartford, where the family was staying in transitional housing. Marcus answered the door, his face cycling through surprise, embarrassment, and something that might have been relief. Jenny, we weren't expecting you. I hope you don't mind. I brought some things for the kids. She held up bags containing new winter coats, school supplies, and books she'd remembered Emma and Ethan enjoying. You didn't have to do that. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. After everything, the children didn't do anything wrong. They shouldn't suffer because of adult choices. Emma appeared behind her father, her face lighting up despite the shadows under her eyes. Aunt Jenny, Daddy, can she come in? The apartment was small but clean, with donated furniture and the kind of temporary feel that spoke of a family still in transition. Lisa emerged from the bedroom, her face hardening when she saw Jenny. What is she doing here? Lisa's voice was cold as winter steel. I brought some things for Emma and Ethan, Jenny said calmly, though her heart was racing. I wanted to see how they were adjusting. We don't need your charity. Lisa's words were sharp, but Jenny noticed the way her eyes lingered on the bags, calculating their contents and value. Mom, Lisa, look! Aunt Jenny brought me the Harry Potter books I wanted. Emma held up the series with genuine excitement, the first spark of joy Jenny had seen in the girl's eyes. That's very thoughtful, Marcus said quietly. Kids, what do you say? Both children thanked Jenny with the politeness they'd been taught, but their hugs were genuine and warm. As they explored their gifts, the adults stood in awkward silence until Lisa finally spoke. I suppose you're here to gloat, to see how the mighty have fallen. Jenny studied her former sister-in-law, noting the stress lines that had deepened around her eyes, the way her clothes hung loose as if she'd lost weight. Actually, I came to tell you that the DA wants me to testify against you. Criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud. The color drained from Lisa's face. You're really going to do it? Send me to prison and destroy what's left of this family? I haven't decided yet. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Jenny hadn't planned to say it, but seeing the children's innocent joy over simple gifts, witnessing their disrupted lives and uncertain future, made everything more complicated. There might be another option, Jenny continued carefully. The DA is most interested in ensuring this doesn't happen to other elderly victims. If there were significant restitution made to previous victims, cooperation with the investigation, and genuine participation in rehabilitation programs. Lisa's eyes narrowed. What kind of restitution? We don't have money. Dorothy Martinez's estate was never properly settled. Her nephew in Arizona never received his rightful inheritance. Making that right would be a start. But that house was sold years ago. We used that money to live on while you planned your next target, Jenny finished. I know, but restitution doesn't have to be immediate. It can be structured as a payment plan based on future income. Marcus was staring at Jenny with something approaching awe. You'd really consider not testifying? For the children's sake, yes. But only if Lisa commits to genuine change. Real accountability. No more targeting elderly people. No more manipulation schemes. No more using family relationships as weapons. Emma looked up from her new books, sensing the adult tension without understanding it. Are you mad at each other? You sound like you're mad. Jenny knelt down to the girl's level. Sometimes adults have to have difficult conversations about fixing mistakes. It doesn't mean we don't care about each other. The simplicity of the explanation seemed to satisfy Emma, who returned to her books with the remarkable resilience of childhood. But Ethan, older and more perceptive, watched the adults with the calculating expression of someone trying to understand a complex puzzle. Later, as Jenny prepared to leave, Marcus walked her to her car while Lisa remained inside with the children. Why are you doing this? He asked. After everything Lisa put you through, why offer her a way out? Jenny considered the question carefully. Because sending her to prison won't undo the damage she's caused, but it will definitely damage Emma and Ethan further. They've already lost their grandmother Dorothy, their home, their stability. Do they really need to lose their mother too? But what if she doesn't change? What if this is just another manipulation? Then I'll testify, and she'll face the full consequences of her choices. But I want to give her one chance to be the mother those children deserve. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll talk to her. Try to make her understand this is her last opportunity. As Jenny drove home through the early November darkness, she reflected on the strange turns her life had taken since Robert's death. 6 months ago, she'd been a grieving widow struggling with loneliness and loss. Now she held the power to destroy or save a family, to seek revenge or offer redemption. The next morning brought a call from Rebecca Harrison, her attorney's voice sharp with professional concern. Jenny, Margaret Walsh told me about your visit to the Martinez family. I have to advise you that offering to withhold testimony could be construed as obstruction of justice. I'm not obstructing justice. I'm considering whether full prosecution serves justice better than accountability and restitution. The DA won't see it that way. If you change your testimony or refuse to cooperate, it could jeopardize the entire case against Lisa Martinez. Other victims might never get justice. Jenny stared out her kitchen window at the yard where Marcus had pretended to fix non-existent problems, where Lisa had calculated how to steal her home and independence. The memory of that betrayal still stung, but it was complicated now by images of Emma's nightmares and Ethan's failing grades. What if Lisa agrees to plead guilty and cooperate fully with the investigation into other cases? Would that satisfy the DA's need for justice, while allowing for structured restitution instead of prison time? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. It's possible. Cooperation that leads to identifying other victims and recovering stolen assets could be valuable to the prosecution. But it would require Lisa to admit to everything, provide detailed information about her other crimes, and submit to ongoing oversight. Complete accountability. Complete accountability, Rebecca agreed. And if she violates any terms of the agreement, she'd face enhanced charges for all the crimes she confessed to. That evening, Jenny's phone rang. Marcus's voice was strained but hopeful. Lisa wants to meet with you. She says she's ready to discuss terms. Jenny smiled, though he couldn't see it. Tell her to come tomorrow at 10 a.m. And Marcus? She should bring that journal, where she documented all my supposed memory problems. We're gonna go through it together. Every lie, every manipulation. If she wants redemption, it starts with complete honesty about what she did. As she hung up the phone, Jenny realized that tomorrow would determine whether Lisa Martinez would choose to become a better person or simply face the consequences of her choices. Either way, Jenny Andrew would finally have the justice she'd fought for. Whether it came in the form of accountability or revenge would be Lisa's decision to make. The confrontation that would determine Lisa Martinez's fate took place in Jenny Andrews' living room on a crisp Tuesday morning in late November. Lisa sat on the same couch where she'd once entertained the children with stories, but now she clutched a worn notebook. the journal containing her fabricated documentation of Jenny's supposed mental decline. Jenny sat across from her in Robert's favorite chair, flanked by Rebecca Harrison and Margaret Walsh. The formal presence of attorney and social worker underscored the gravity of what was about to unfold. "Lisa," Jenny began, her voice steady but not unkind, "this is your last chance to make things right. Not just for yourself, but for Emma and Ethan, for Dorothy Martinez's family, and for every elderly person you might target in the future." Lisa's hands trembled as she opened the journal. "I want you to know, I never meant for it to go this far. When I first called you that night, we really were desperate. We really had lost our apartment." "But when did it change?" Margaret Walsh asked. "When did helping yourself become stealing from Jenny?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment, staring at pages of her own handwriting. "The second day we were here, I saw how big this house was, how valuable everything was, how alone Jenny seemed. And I remembered how easy it had been with Dorothy." The admission hung in the air like a confession at trial. Rebecca Harrison made notes while Margaret Walsh recorded the conversation with Lisa's permission. "Tell me about Dorothy," Jenny said quietly. Lisa's voice cracked as she spoke. She was Marcus's aunt, and she really was starting to show signs of memory problems. "But not as bad as I made them seem. I found a doctor who would diagnose dementia based on my reports of her behavior. I exaggerated everything, made her seem worse than she was. And the house? I convinced her she was unsafe living alone, said we'd take care of her and manage her finances until she felt better. She trusted us." Lisa wiped tears from her eyes. "She died thinking we were family who loved her. She never knew we'd stolen everything from her." Jenny felt a surge of anger thinking about Dorothy's confusion and loneliness, but she pushed it aside. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about preventing future victims. "What about the other families the DA mentioned?" Lisa looked surprised. "How did you know about them?" "The investigation is quite thorough," Rebecca said dryly. 3 other elderly victims, same pattern of manipulation and financial exploitation. Over the next hour, Lisa detailed a decade-long pattern of targeting isolated elderly people, usually through some family connection or community organization. She'd perfected the techniques of gaslighting and gradual control, always careful to stay just within legal boundaries while psychologically destroying her victims' confidence and independence. "I told myself I was helping them," Lisa said, though the words sounded hollow even to her. "That they needed someone to manage their affairs, that they were better off with family handling things." "While you helped yourself to their money and property," Margaret Walsh observed. "Yes." The simple admission carried the weight of years of deception. Jenny studied Lisa's face, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus calculated performance. She'd learned to recognize the difference over months of manipulation. "Here's what's going to happen," Jenny said finally. "You're going to plead guilty to elder abuse charges in all 4 cases. You're going to cooperate fully with the DA's investigation and provide detailed information about every crime you've committed." Lisa nodded, though her face was pale. "You're going to make full restitution to Dorothy Martinez's estate. Her nephew in Arizona will receive what should have been his inheritance. That includes the proceeds from her house sale plus interest. But we don't have that money." "You'll get a job," Jenny continued firmly. "A legitimate job. And you'll make payments for as long as it takes. Margaret will help you find employment and set up a payment plan." "What about prison?" Jenny exchanged glances with Rebecca Harrison. "If you fulfill every requirement of the plea agreement, submit to regular monitoring, and demonstrate genuine change, the DA has agreed to structured community service and probation instead of prison time." The relief on Lisa's face was palpable, but Jenny wasn't finished. "However, if you violate any term of this agreement, if you target another elderly person, if you miss restitution payments without valid cause, if you try to manipulate the system in any way, you'll serve the full sentence for all charges. Enhanced penalties for violation of the plea agreement. I understand. I don't think you do yet." Jenny's voice carried the authority of someone who had survived Lisa's manipulation and emerged stronger. "This isn't just about legal consequences. This is about becoming the person Emma and Ethan deserve as a mother. They've been through enough trauma because of your choices." Lisa broke down completely then, sobbing with what appeared to be genuine remorse. "I never wanted to hurt the children. I thought I was securing their future. By teaching them that theft and manipulation are acceptable? Margaret Walsh's voice was sharp. By showing them that elderly people are targets instead of human beings deserving respect? No, Lisa whispered. I see that now. I see what I've become. Jenny leaned forward. Lisa, I'm giving you something Dorothy Martinez never got. A chance to make amends while you're still alive to do it. Don't waste it. 6 months later, Jenny Andrews stood in her kitchen making coffee for one, but the silence no longer felt oppressive. Through her window, she could see the garden she'd planted in the spring, vegetables and flowers growing side by side in the space where she'd once felt so alone. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Emma got an A on her science project. She wanted you to know. Jenny smiled. The family was slowly rebuilding their lives in a small apartment across town. Marcus had found steady work with a construction company that valued his experience and work ethic. Lisa was employed at a senior center, ironically spending her days genuinely helping elderly people under close supervision, as part of her community service agreement. The children were in therapy, working through the trauma of family instability and learning to understand the difference between helping people and exploiting them. Emma had asked if she could visit Jenny sometime soon, not to live with her, but to show her the story she'd written about a brave grandmother who saved her family from making terrible mistakes. The doorbell rang, interrupting Jenny's thoughts. She opened it to find a young woman in her 30s with an official badge and a nervous expression. Mrs. Andrew? I'm Detective Sarah Chen with the Hartford County Elder Abuse Unit. We were wondering if you'd consider helping us train officers to recognize the warning signs of family manipulation cases. Jenny invited the detective in, listening as she explained how Jenny's case had become a model for identifying and prosecuting elder abuse. The evidence-gathering techniques Jenny had used, the way she'd documented the manipulation campaign, had been incorporated into law enforcement training programs. We've had 12 similar cases reported since your situation became known, Detective Chen explained. Elderly people who recognized the patterns you described and reached out for help before it was too late. As the detective left with Jenny's agreement to join the training program, Jenny reflected on the unexpected direction her life had taken. She'd started as a victim, become a fighter, offered mercy when she could have chosen revenge, and now found purpose in protecting others facing similar threats. Her phone rang, her daughter Sarah calling from Seattle for their weekly check-in. Mom, you sound different, Sarah observed after they'd caught up on family news. Stronger, somehow. I feel stronger, Jenny admitted. I learned something important this year. Getting older doesn't mean becoming powerless. Sometimes it means finally understanding your own strength. As evening settled over Connecticut, Jenny prepared dinner for one, and realized she wasn't lonely anymore. She had purpose, community, and the satisfaction of knowing that Lisa's potential future victims were safe because she'd chosen to fight back. The house that had almost been stolen from her was truly hers again, not just legally, but emotionally. And, in a strange way, Lisa Martinez had given her an unexpected gift, the knowledge that Jenny Andrew was far stronger than even she had realized. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the person your challenges force you to be. In the end, Lisa had tried to make Jenny pay rent in her own home. Instead, Jenny had taught Lisa the real cost of her choices and offered her the chance to finally pay it forward instead of backward. The lesson had been expensive for everyone involved, but for those willing to learn from it, the education was priceless. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.